Hi, this is Kirby Sommers, and I welcome you to my true crime podcast. Today is December the 18th, and this podcast is going to be a little bit different. I am going to be talking about my experience as a woman who has been the victim of more than one crime, including multiple sex crimes. What my experience has been for the past 3.5 years being on Twitter. It's not pretty, and I don't have a pre-planned speech, but I'm going to speak from the heart because what I have realized, and this was really long before Elon Musk turned Twitter into a dirty and bad word, including the most toxic place anyone can be on, whether you are the survivor of a crime or whether you're just an ordinary person. It has been the most emotionally unbalanced place to be. And I want to talk about, as I said, I want to talk about my experience. Earlier, before I start, if you care to give this a like, that would be nice. I think that I might just stop asking people to like my podcast. If you like it, you like it, and if you don't, you don't. I have come to a fork in the road here. There have been some really great moments I have had for the last 3.5 years on Twitter, but I can tell you that 90% of the time has been a complete nightmare. So I did tweet this morning, and I'm not going to be using Twitter that much. I applied to post, and I was accepted right away, despite the fact that they have a very long waiting list. And I've also got a Mastodon account, so that I am hoping these two places that I have migrated to will be a place where I can feel safe, because as a person who has experienced violence, real violence, not just the kind of violence that I am exposed to on a daily basis on a platform like Twitter, I am hoping these two other places will have better monitoring devices in place to ensure that there is no bullying. And I am actually quite hopeful that after I share my experience with you, that you will become mindful of what it is like to have many followers, to suddenly go from being someone who guards my privacy zealously, and then to go from that to then having, what did I have, 35,000 followers with tons of people I had to block, and having endless demands put on my time by people who I've never met. But I want to go over my experience slowly and hope that it will not only resonate with you, that perhaps we can move forward together with something that was left behind. Because while social media has been perfected, right? It's been perfected to pull at our emotions, to put the right tweets in front of us, to sort of like make sure that we're following their script, not necessarily our script. What's been lost is our ability to have compassion for another human being. Although, I'm not saying everybody has lost that. Otherwise, I would not waste my time on this podcast. But I did tweet this morning that I'll be uploading a podcast about how toxic being on Twitter has been, about how people who have never met, and I'm referred to as an influencer. There should be a separate category for a survivor of multiple crimes, because being an influencer does not in any way translate into I'm here sharing my world with you and sharing my experience with you because I am the victim and the survivor of multiple crimes, which include several sex crimes. So think about that. There was a time that if you were the victim of a sex crime, your name was not posted in a newspaper. If you were young and you were in school, you kind of like dropped out, where basically, you went through many years of PTSD. Well, now on social media, you get to go through PSD triggers and re-victimization every time you check your Twitter feed. So, in the beginning, when I didn't know any better, well, the first thing I lost was my boyfriend. When I told him that I was going to go public about my experience with the Ricklesses, my ongoing stalking, which has continued to present day. It's funny because I received an email from somebody who doesn't know me who said, well, what happened to you happened years ago. No, if it happened to me years ago, I could have left it behind years ago. I did not have to jeopardize my real estate career, my friendships, my relationship, if what was happening to me on a daily basis was not part of an ongoing harassment campaign that I experience on a daily basis on so many different levels that I don't have enough time, nor do I have the energy to go over. I am still recuperating from COVID, so my voice may not be my normal voice. It's hard to talk. My throat is killing me. And so, and that's another thing, I tweeted that I had COVID, and some person who doesn't know me, a denier, was like, oh no, you have a cold. You know what? If I tell you I have COVID, don't tell me that I have a cold, number one. Don't negate somebody else's experience based on your feelings. We can start there. That was that is I'm just going to leave that one alone. So the very first thing that happened was I lost my boyfriend. He was like, oh gee, I don't know that I can support you in what you're going to be doing. I know that it's a very good thing. You will help a lot of people by sharing your story. However, my son was a victim of sexual abuse. He was raped as a child, and he subsequently became a drug addict, and then he subsequently died of an overdose because he could not handle it. And if I were to stand by you while you go public with your story, it is too close to my own experience for me to handle it properly. So we can't. And I was like, okay. And if that was his conversation and what he imparted to me, hoping perhaps that I would abandon the idea, it did not work, obviously, because I immediately opened a new account that was taken away from me by Elon Musk. Maybe a month ago today or a month ago tomorrow. And you know what? I said at the time that when one door closes, 10 others open. And one of those doors is my sitting here right now telling you my experience during the past 3.5 years on Twitter. For the most part, 90% has been a nightmare. So in the beginning, I was I was pretty green, even though my business account, I had had it up for, I believe, since 2012. I didn't really use it. I didn't really know how to use Twitter. I didn't really know how to do a thread. I didn't know how to do anything on Twitter because I wasn't a regular tweeter. I wasn't a real social media animal. And so I needed to learn that, and I learned it in the beginning. What I did not know in the beginning, however, was not to take private messages, direct messages. And so, in the beginning, I had people contact me, complete strangers. Typically, I would not respond to anything from a complete stranger, but in my mind, they were followers of my account. And I thought, well, it's not a complete stranger. It was just a screen name, right? Everybody just has a screen name. It's usually just victims who are stepping forward who, you know, hey, my name is Kirby Sommers and this has happened to me. And of course, I have subsequently put my books on Amazon, and people do read my work because I have done a lot of work on the Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell case. So yeah, I have appeared on some podcasts, but I kind of I sort of stopped for a while because I did not like really being exposed to so many more people. So in the beginning, as I was saying, I didn't understand that when somebody sent me a private message and I responded, it wasn't like I can respond one time. These people then began to have these very long-winded conversations with me. So for example, one person subsequently sent me anywhere from 500 to 600 emails, all of which pertained to her experience and her desire for me to look at this and look at that. Well, I would need a staff of maybe 3 to 5 people just to read all of the material that she sent me. And I would occasionally write on Twitter because she wasn't the only one doing it. There were many people that did it. There was a person who insisted she was an Epstein victim of some sort. She had no way of proving this to me. And frankly, the only person that I was really communicating with was Virginia Giuffre, and on a limited basis because we were both busy. And then her attorney basically told her no more talking to anybody on Twitter, her attorney meaning David Boies. But I had one person who well, no, I had several people insist they were Epstein victims, and for some reason they needed to talk to me. When I told all of them, but in particular one of them, she sent me 69 emails nonstop. But the emails alone, which I counted, were not the end of it. She then stalked me on Facebook, on LinkedIn, wherever I had a social media account. This woman found me, stalked me, called me the B word because I couldn't help her. I've had that happen to me more times than I care to express. What I have also had happen to me, and by the way, when you have like approximately 35,000 followers, when you have an account with a large following and you're one person, I don't have a nonprofit, I don't have a staff, it's just me. My Twitter feed, and I took a screenshot that I'll put up somewhere. Every hour, I had about just shy of 400 tweets. Every hour, 400 tweets that would come in. Responses to tweets I put up, or off-topic situations with people suggesting that I go look at this video, or I go read this article, or I do this, or I do that, or I connect with this person, or this is, with shy of 400 of these every hour of every day for, almost the entire time I've been on Twitter. So it was an impossible task for me or anyone without a staff to go through, even to read all of that stuff. The other thing that happened was I would get emails from people who had become part of my Epstein Project newsletter. Now, I want to thank those of you who have supported my work by becoming members of my newsletters. I have a new one on Substack, which is doing really well. My Epstein Project newsletter, as you know, is in its 4th year. But some people would send me information. You have to read this. You have to, and you know what? I would politely try to respond and say, hey, you know what? Do me a favor. I have a very unique perspective on this. I am the survivor of a person who is connected to the Epstein, Ghislaine, Franklin, Presidio. I can go on and on. Who is an elite. I have a personal space, and then I'm also the only person who has been a survivor of one of these monsters, who is also working on these cases. And I have a very unique perspective because I lived in a world of that gilded cage for 8 years, and I've seen things and I've heard things, and I don't like to have that perspective jarred. And so therefore I barely read anyone else's work. I read something only if I'm actually looking for a certain piece of information that I may have seen it on mainstream, and maybe I want to link to it, because sometimes you have to link to mainstream in order to make your point, even though I'm considered indie media. But I don't want you to forget that I'm indie media with experience. I'm not indie media, let's say, for example, like Whitney Webb. That's another thing. You have people like Whitney Webb, and you can listen to Professor Hamamoto's show where he talks about her in particular and what is a synthetic creation and what is not. And so I think I have to remind you that a synthetic creation is something that is a person who was not born out of a grassroots movement. We all grew up with synthetic creations. They're what we saw on television. They're who we listened to, when we listened to our music as we grew up, and even to present day. Unless you're a synthetic creation, you do not get airtime, because the FCC, the Federal Communications thing, they decide who gets on the air. And unless you are part of the system, you don't get to be on the air. So yeah, somebody like I don't know, name the person who has a lot of regular mainstream time, like Joe Rogan. And yeah, he is part of the system. He is now a synthetic creation, okay? He's been bought and paid for. So for somebody like Whitney Webb, who is not the victim of a crime, she's writing, and if you like her work, like her work. But know that she's not the victim of a crime, and that, she's writing whatever she's writing for whatever the purpose, that's fine. But when it comes to her hiding behind the father of her child to attack me, which is what she's done, she has claimed that I am Clinton adjacent. She has claimed that I am not through her, the father of her child, which apparently she can afford because let's not forget she has $10.7 million or whatever she has, and she comes from a wealthy family. And that's all good and that's fine. I'm happy for anyone who can be an independent woman and doesn't have to rely on a man. Clearly, she can't rely on the one she chose to pay her way through life. I'm happy for her, but I'm not happy that she uses her position and the number of her followers, which far exceeded mine because I am grassroots. I'm very grassroots. I am the victim of a member of the cabal that Whitney Webb claims that she is exposing. So then why then does she attack my victimhood, my life? What happened to me happened when she was a child, and it happens to present day. But when she becomes part of a group of, I guess I can still only call them trolls and people who try to marginalize me by saying things that are not factual, like literally not factual, just made up stuff. That makes her no better than your anonymous troll. So like on Twitter every day, I had to put up with anonymous trolling by people who were hiding behind, you know, fake names, fake accounts, people who just being anonymous on a place like Twitter is perfect for, let's say, the FBI. In fact, guess what? I knew someone who was many years ago busted in some major crime. And part of his plea deal, in his case, he took a plea. Uh, he had a relative who did not take a plea, and that's a story for another day. But the FBI, part of his plea was the FBI put him on Twitter, where he is to present day, to attack on a daily basis through his Twitter account, which has a very large following, to attack a certain person who owned a certain company. And that's what he did, and he did it for the FBI. So if the FBI, and then of course he couldn't do it alone because it's a lot of work. So he ended up getting an assistant, who, a writer friend of his, to help him with the tweets and to keep on this daily assault, day after day after day after day. He was getting a paycheck from the FBI just to troll the head of a company and the company for the FBI. So if I know of at least two people that are working for the FBI trolling one person who owns a company, I've already told you that the CIA does this. The FBI certainly has rooms that are just for keeping track of people who don't go with the program. People like myself, for example, I don't go with the program. I don't like any politician. I'm not a Democrat. I'm not a Republican. I don't like Donald Trump. I don't like Biden. I don't like any of them because by the time you reach that level, you are compromised. You are compromised by the kind of setup that Jeffrey Epstein had. And so my experience has been to show up day after day after day after day after day after day. And frankly, it's almost the end of the year. I have COVID and I have yet to be able to take a day off. And I am sure those of you who utilize social media, and we're talking about Twitter right now, you take the weekend off. If you have a job, you take the weekend off. I don't get to do any of that because the work has been so, it's been like an avalanche. There's so much to do all the time. All the time. Even, and I'm just going to veer off topic for a second. Even keeping track of people who pay the subscription for my Epstein Project newsletter late requires that either I or a very good friend who has been kind enough to help me sit down and send them a reminder that their payment is late. And then once that payment comes through, another email has to be sent out because I like to have people be up to date. So even though they didn't pay for the newsletter for a particular week, I like to send it out to them. So it requires 2 to 3, sometimes 4 emails extra when somebody is late paying for the subscription that they've had. There is a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes, and there's a lot of work that goes on in full view of everyone. Now, why it doesn't occur to most people that someone like myself is re-traumatized regularly by all of the requests. Oh, Kirby, go look at this. Oh, Kirby, look at this. Oh, Kirby, you've got to read this. Who really believes that somebody that has about 35,000 followers, and I get thousands and thousands and thousands of emails and tweets every single day. Does anybody on social media ever stop to think about the other person? Because I think somewhere along the line, social media has made it okay to not be empathetic, which is unlike, I live in New York City. We're not the friendliest people on the planet, but guess what? We're courteous. We walk into a store, we say hello to the people who are tending to us. We ask about their lives. We pretty much know their names. There's a polite exchange. You know, we're living in New York, which is again not the friendliest place on the planet. In real time, face to face, there is consideration for another person, so that if I walk up to, let's say, the deli counter and I see that the people behind the deli are busy with other people, I don't shout that they should go immediately and gather whatever it is I need. But on social media, there's this constant shouting. There's this constant telling me what to do. And the few times that I take the trouble and time, because again, it takes time to respond to even a bad email that is completely off the mark, because this person must think that I have a staff of 100. So when I respond to someone and say, hey, I really prefer, don't send me a ton of information. I don't have the time to look through it properly, so it's a disservice to you. And I really prefer to do my own work because, as I said, I have a special place, a vantage point that no one else who's working on the Epstein case or on similar cases has. And I don't want that to be lost because that's my edge. That person turns around and calls me the B word or says, well, I'm never going to buy your books. I mean, really? So that I can't even give someone a reply and expect that person to treat me like an equal. I don't work for anyone. I don't work for anyone. I am doing this as a public service. And yes, I write books and I write a newsletter to offset the time. And frankly, it doesn't come close to paying me for nonstop time. I barely have time to sleep. I pretty much stop working when I go to bed. My social life has become null. I have COVID and I am doing this podcast because I am hoping that somehow we can learn to have empathy again for a person for whom it is not normal to share the kinds of things that I have shared. It is not a normal state to tell the whole world that I have been a victim many times over, not only of crime, but of a sexual crime. It is embarrassing. It is humiliating. It is re-victimizing. And I do this because I am hopeful that by sharing my experience and sharing my input and sharing the information that I gather, that I share through my newsletters and my books, that somehow we can make this a better place. Make the world a better place. Elon Musk showed up at just the right time. He is a toxic human being. Everybody can see that now. Whoever thought that a member of the elite was going to be a bastion of free speech learned their lesson, I hope. But we do not have to be in a bad relationship because anyone who is putting up with Elon Musk, and I have seen some of the people that he has thrown out come back, and I'm scratching my head and wondering, this person has just shy of 1 million followers, and this person doesn't really need to be here on Twitter because it's kind of like being in a bad relationship. You can have a bad relationship, and it doesn't necessarily even have to include another person. It can include a social media platform like Twitter. We have all now seen in real time, at the same time, we've had the experience of Elon Musk, and we have had the experience of having to be careful about speaking our mind, which is really, I think, the reason I'm doing this. I'm speaking my mind. I think all of us have the right to speak our mind. And if you lose that right and you lose the ability to speak your mind, you are also giving up your ability to defend yourself. We all have the right to defend ourselves. Something that was taken away from me by becoming a person with so many followers that I had to literally be nice to the person who was the most unkind to me. I will no longer be doing that. And it's not just because it's the new year, although it's a good time. It's a good time. I've always lived a life where I have gotten better and better and better and better. And I pat myself on the back, and I do something like this podcast with COVID. And when I'm done with this podcast, I'm going to pat myself on the back because external, whatever anyone can give me externally, it's not real. The only opinion that matters is how you feel internally, and only you can give that to yourself. Just like I learned a long time ago that only I could really give myself what I needed in order to survive what I survived, overcome it, and then try to make the world a better place by sharing it with you. So that said, I hope that I've made myself clear. I do want to thank you for following me on Twitter. I will probably be on Post more than I will on Mastodon. I like the fact that Post allows me to write as much as I want, include photographs as much as I want. They have made it a point to say that they're not going to put up with aggressive behavior or the kind of behavior that has become the norm, not the exception, but the norm on Twitter. And so I hope you follow me on to Mastodon and to Post. They're going to be opening up the doors soon. I do have my newsletters. Primarily, my work will be shared through that. I'm not going to stop that because I enjoy writing. When I was a little girl, that was my dream. It was derailed and derailed and derailed. It's derailed no more. I am an author. I'm an investigative journalist, but I am also the survivor of multiple crimes. And as such, I'm going to ask you to respect my time and my space, and for us to move forward with real heart, not just an emoji, not just the emoji. Emojis are not the end all, and emojis, mean nothing, but move forward with heart for each other. And the next time you want to say something nasty about someone, perhaps give yourself a 5-minute break and simply don't do it, because bad energy begets bad energy. And really, do you need that? No, because it then, leads to other issues like health issues, so on and so forth. So with that, I'm going to wish you happy holidays. And I'm going to, just say, keep moving forward with your heart. Let your heart guide you. Okay, it's Kirby Sommers. Enjoy the day. Thank you.